Julian in the Field here. Today's question is, why don't rivers run dry? Well, first of all, that's a misleading question for two reasons. One, because rivers don't have legs, so how could they possibly run? And two, because the question implies that rivers don't run dry, when in fact about 50 to 60% of the river network is dry at least one day per year. And I say river network because nobody really knows what a river is, because there's no scientific consensus around the difference between a creek, a river, or if you're in Appalachia like I am, a run. In fact, it's said that some Appalachian runs, just like this one, have been running since before the Atlantic Ocean had even formed. So, really old. Check this out. I don't know what that is. Little divots. Because the mountains I'm standing between formed about 480 million years ago. About 280 million years older than the Atlantic Ocean. Which would make the rivers that run down them older than the Atlantic too, right? Well, scientists don't all agree about that because although we know that water has been running down these mountains for 480 million years, there's really no way of telling whether it was this creek or that creek and whether it's been the same creek or river for those same 480 million years. Wait, so does that mean if a river changes course, it just becomes a new river? Well, it's at this point where we're faced with a glaring question, or quote, of course, by Heraclitus. No man steps in the same river twice, because the river is not the same river, nor he the same man. Implying, of course, that humans, like rivers, are dynamic systems. So, change is kind of baked into it, right? If a river changes, is it still the same river? Well, as it so happens, rivers do change. Big rivers, like the Mississippi, like the Cosi, like the Yellow River. These are all rivers that have changed course quite dramatically, and the name follows the water. So, culturally at least, linguistically, we give rivers the grace of being able to change direction and still keep their old name. Which would put this little run over here back in the running for older than the Atlantic Ocean. Take that, science. Well, that is, of course, unless this little puppy over here has ever dried up. No water, no river. Right? Wrong. Because apparently, even a dry ditch in the ground can still be called a river. It just gets a cool new name, like ephemeral river or non-perennial river. But, hell, anything can be a river, I guess. So a river can change shape, dry up, and still be a river. But I've never seen this one dry up. If it rains a lot, it'll flood. And if there's a long drought, it'll slow down. But why is there a limit to how dry it'll get? Let's see if I can explain with a demo. Oh, well, I hit a rock. But see how this is filling with water? I just dug below the water line. If you drilled into this mountain, you'd eventually hit the water line and water would start coming out. That's the idea behind the well. And that's what happens when you have an artisanal spring, for example. And that's what the creek does too. It just digs pretty dramatically below the water line. And on either side are giant mountains full of water that seep into the creek all day, every day. So more than half, and in woods like this, probably more like 80% of the water that's running through this creek didn't come down as rain. It seeped out of the mountains. I hung this here a few years ago and forgot about it. Pretty cool. The water drains out of this mountain really slowly, like a few feet a day at best. And there's a ton of water sitting in this giant well of a mountain, between the grains of dirt and the rocks, making the water running over my feet years old, even though it rained just yesterday. And that's why droughts don't really affect the creek. Because God knows how long it would have to go without raining before this entire mountain drains at the pace that it drains at. But what about the flooding? I mean, look at that bank over there. You can see how high the water runs when there's a flood. Why does it affect the creek one way and not the other? If this is all water that's coming out of the mountainside, why does rain flood it? And now you might think what I thought, which is the rain comes down and overflows through gullies and stuff and fills the creek up in the matter of hours. But that's not what happens. And we know that because the water that's in the hillside carries a different chemical fingerprint than the water that falls as rain. And so scientists will come in after a rainstorm, take a sample of the mountain water, take a sample of the rainwater, and then measure what's in the creek. And as it turns out, what fills the creek isn't rainwater at all. I didn't know that. And so what it's doing is like squeezing the water out of the bottom from the top, which means that the water in the creek is still really, really old. Ew, and we're drinking that. That's the drinking water. Old water. Gross. So I guess the conclusion here is old mountains, old river, old water, and I still don't really know what a river is and what a river isn't. But I suppose I like it that way.
Oh yeah.
Get a cook, yo!